All right, welcome everybody to Frank Analysis. I'm your host, Franco. I am pleased to be joined by Misty Winston and Jesse Zerwell of Facts on the Ground. We are the new additions to the MCSC network. So, Misty and Jesse, how does that feel, guys? How does it feel to be a part of that network now?
Misty?
I think it's amazing. I'm really glad that, first of all, we all kind of just organically came together through different relationships. Like we all have like this weird, like meeting each other story where, it wasn't like any one thing. It was just over time, we all kind of, came together. I have been saying for a long time that, as everybody knows, I'm kind of a geek about independent media. And so I have been saying for a long time that we need to kind of band together because there's strength in numbers. And I mean, we've seen it over the past, really, it's been going on for a while, but it's really amped over the past like 6 months or so, the censorship on independent media. So I love the fact that we're banding together and that we can help each other out. I feel really good about it and I love everybody involved. So I'm really excited.
I'll just second what everything Misty just said and add to that I am super excited and also a little caught off guard because I never expected anyone to pay attention to the show when I started it. Not in a woe is me way, but everybody and their mother has a show now, and it's really hard to get traction and to get viewers. And I'm psyched that people of your pedigree, Franco, of Niko's, of everybody who's involved with MCSC sees something in the show. I'm psyched that Misty saw something and was courageous enough to join me on screen. So it feels like a victory of some sort. And it feels like there's, with regard to the whole strength and numbers thing, that there is a new sort of independent media movement building, one that's not rejecting other independent media outlets necessarily, but that is taking so-called independent media outlets to task because a lot of them seem to be slipping. And it feels good to be part of a vanguard of sorts, although I say that not in a snobby sense.
We definitely have to hold some people accountable. And I think that the audience members help with that too. I think that out of all independent content creators, I think that us in the MCSC network, even before we joined, we were the most in touch with our audience members. And I feel like we were already a part of it because we were already close with each other. We would already communicate with each other like off camera. So it's organic. We got to know each other before we officially joined. But yeah, I wanna start out the show by talking about something that is overlooked a lot by a lot of independent channels, especially in the TYT realm, which is foreign policy. So Ben Norton tweeted this out, and let me share this for everybody. It said the Biden administration is continuing Trump's murderous criminal regime change war on Venezuela's elected government. Here, the spokesperson of the Biden State Department, former CIA agent Ned Price, makes that clear. When it comes to U.S. imperialism in Latin America, there's absolutely no difference. So let me zoom this in for everybody. So here's the question that was asked to him. It said, staying in Latin America, is it fair to say that the Biden administration is pursuing regime change in Venezuela? And then Mr. Price gave a long word salad. He said, it is fair to say that the Biden administration supports the democratic aspirations of the people of Venezuela. Our overriding goal is to support a peaceful democratic transition in Venezuela through free and fair presidential and parliamentary elections, and to help the Venezuelan people rebuild their lives and their country. Isn't that nice? They care about the people so much.
Oh my God, it's such bullshit. God, that's a lot of bullshit.
We know at the root of much of the misery, of the suffering of the people of Venezuela stands one individual. And we have been very clear that Nicolas Maduro is a dictator. It's always just that one boogeyman that we have to go after. His actions have not been in the best interest of the people of Venezuela. It hasn't just been the United States that has been saying that. It has been the United States and many of our closest partners, both in the region and well beyond. And
The
then,
U.S. doesn't have many close partners in the region anymore.
yeah. And so then the next question that they ask is like, so basically, it's basically a nicer way of saying that Maduro must go. And then he gives another word salad, Mr. Price. He says, we believe and we support the democratic aspirations of the people of Venezuela. That is why we are committed to supporting the people through humanitarian measures and also targeting regime officials and their cronies involved in human rights abuses and corruption. So we're going after the big bad, right?
Yeah. Well, anytime the United States uses humanitarian, you should be very concerned because that means they're coming for you. They are coming to overthrow your government or bomb your country or steal your natural resources. That's what that means, really. Generally speaking, there is no, and the fact that it still like baffles me that anything United States has any moral standing whatsoever to call anybody out for human rights abuses ever again. Ever. Like we don't have that's not a thing. We can't do that. We're the worst.
I spent a bit of time looking at this screenshot that you sent, Franco, and analyzing the double speak in it. And Mr. Price first answers, it is fair to say, this is in response to the question, staying in Latin America, is it fair to say that the Biden administration is pursuing regime change in Venezuela? Mr. Price, it is fair to say that the Biden administration supports the democratic aspirations of the people of Venezuela. So Mr. Price doesn't say no, but turns regime change on its head into supporting the democratic aspirations of the people of Venezuela. So loads the deck from the start with the answer to that question, and then continues to use the buzzwords and phrases, peaceful democratic transition, misery and the suffering of the people of Venezuela. Maduro is a dictator. His actions have not been in the best interests of the people of Venezuela, as if the US's actions have been in the best interest of Venezuela. And it hasn't just been the US that has been saying that. It has been the United States and many of our closest partners, both in the region and well beyond. Well, who? Why don't you list them if there's such a vast array of them? So basically, it's basically a nicer way of saying Maduro must go. And again, we believe and we support the democratic aspirations of the people of Venezuela. He doesn't say no. And then he says, we're committed to humanitarian measures for the Venezuelan people, which I think any fair
while we sanction them.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I was going to say, is that humanitarian measures is a hideous euphemism for sanctions, and not just economic sanctions, but economic sanctions that cost people their lives. And the almost robotic disinterest with which Mr. Price responds here it's almost unbelievable, but that's
Plenty
how
of scientific evidence also showing that how those sanctions are killing people there. But yeah, this. I'm gonna show everybody pretty much like what they're plotting right now. So
I would just say the Biden administration's approach so far has been horrendous, but I'm not surprised, and I expect more of the same.
Of course. So here's an article by Max Blumenthal and Anya Parampil of The Gray Zone. It says U.S. virtual ambassador to Venezuela hosts insurrectionist summit ahead of Biden's Guaido recognition. So The Gray Zone, they attempted to ask this guy named James Story, the U.S.'s virtual ambassador to Venezuela, questions about a closed-door summit that he hosted between February 19th and 26th at the Bogota Marriott Hotel in Colombia, because the guy, he's not in Venezuela anymore. He's working in Colombia. He's now based in Colombia, where he's scheming over there. I want to note that James Story has not worked inside of Venezuela since March 2019. He's been in Colombia since then. This is after he posted pictures promoting Guaido, and he was promoting the multi-million-dollar bounty that the Trump administration placed on President Maduro and other political allies, alleging them of having ties to a drug cartel, which there's very little evidence of showing how that cartel even exists. In the meeting that they had, the people who went were fugitive Venezuelan insurrectionists. Also, they were far-right opposition leaders. They were all scheming about the next U.S.-backed regime change operation against elected leftist government in Venezuela. So the details about this meeting were leaked to Venezuela's government, to the Venezuelan government by a Colombian official. So here's what the Gray Zone wrote. They quoted Jorge Rodriguez saying, "Here is the agenda from the meeting that someone from the Duque government, angered that this is taking place on their soil, sent us." And that's what he tweeted on February 22nd. The tweet was accompanied by a screenshot of a document which outlined the itinerary of the conference, which was called Visit of the Venezuelan Presidential Commission. According to Rodriguez, the summit's attendees included right-wing opposition leader Leopoldo Lopez, attorney and former lawmaker Julio Borges, and former Exxon lawyer Carlos Vecchio, who now serve as ambassador for Guaido in Washington. All three of these men, they're evading either criminal charges or prison sentences in Venezuela for crimes ranging from incitement of violence to participation in attempts to assassinate President Nicolas Maduro. The event, and I also want to point this out, the event highlighted Story as the Biden administration's de facto manager of the radical wing of Venezuela's opposition that seeks regime change at all costs. The apparent outcome of the meeting suggested he has played a pivotal role in ensuring continuity between the Trump and Biden administrations on Venezuela. And also on March 2nd, that's when Antony Blinken said that they recognize Guaido as the interim president. So absolutely no change. And this was predicted already. So guys, what are your thoughts on this?
It's the same language we've been hearing since early 2019. And if it weren't costing the lives of so many Venezuelans, it would be hilarious that they've been at this for 2 years and just failing perpetually. And as Max and Anya and Ben at the Gray Zone have been really good about reporting on, we see these people for who they are. We see Guaido riding around Caracas on the back of a motorcycle or a moped for either transportation or some PR stunt. I don't know which it was. Maybe it was both. We see the same names getting recycled, the same regime change fanatics getting recycled. Carlos Vecchio, Leopoldo Lopez. And the fact that none of these people has had to pay a price for the crimes they've committed is why they're able to keep coming back around, and why they're able to keep pursuing what's never going to be successful. I don't know the latest poll numbers, but from what I last read, it's still, even the opposition to Maduro in Venezuela, a lot of them do not want regime change of any kind, whether it comes from the US or another Western power or any foreign power. They want to be left alone to figure out their affairs for themselves. That's the bottom line. But as in the Middle East, we can't seem to let them do that.
No, they have natural resources we need. It's really depressing. Like, to me, this is just really depressing because, I mean, I say this all the time. How many times does your government get to lie to you before your sense of skepticism kicks in? I mean, this is so obvious. It's blatant. It's right in your face. They're really not hiding it. I mean, yeah, they're doing the propaganda shit and they're spinning it and all of that to the best that they can. But it's just really depressing to me that so many people still fall for this stuff and that still put any credibility to anything the United States government does anywhere anymore. I mean, even our own, I mean, I understand Steve Poikonen says all the time, the United States is the most propagandized country on earth. He's absolutely right. And I get that. Like, I understand that propaganda is very powerful, but it really is just depressing that it's so blatant. It's so obvious, and they still get away with it over and over. It's not like this is something new. This is what we do. It's like the same playbook over and over and over again. I mean, there's little tweaks here and there. You know, they got to switch it up, you know, based on different geopolitical stuff and, you know, all of that. But for the most part, it's the same thing. This is what we do everywhere. And it's just depressing that we continue to be able to pull this shit off in broad daylight. It's crazy.
So go ahead, Jesse.
Part of it, I think a big part of it too is that it's rarely in the news cycle anymore, in the mainstream news cycle. In early 2019, it was in the mainstream news cycle a lot. Now we barely hear anything, if anything, about it. And so people, understandably, I suppose, forget about it. But I think it indicates a failure, a huge failure on the part of mainstream media, that it was, you know, a so-called hot button issue, as they like to say, for a few months, and then they dropped it once there was nothing.
And some independent media too. Some independent media needs to take some accountability too.
Right, and it's that lack of coverage, that willful lack of coverage, that on purpose lack of coverage, that is why, a big reason why Biden's administration has been able to get away with what it's gotten away with so far, vis-a-vis Venezuela, and why it's going to get away with a lot more, because it's not on people's radars, and it's not their fault entirely. I'm not blaming anybody for not knowing anything about Venezuela, but you know, mainstream media is mostly to blame, since that's primarily the media that Americans consume. So it's no wonder that there's a dearth of knowledge about what the U.S. has been doing and is continuing to do to Venezuela in the U.S.
Some people should know better, though. Like, if they're in a position of delivering the news and criticizing the mainstream media, then they should be talking about this, and they should be more informed about this. It's not that hard. Just find the right outlets and be around the right people, and this information will come to you. So that people wonder why we call out other commentators and other journalists. It's because they're doing a shitty job at informing the people, and then you wonder why we can't get anything done fast enough, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's really like it's all intertwined. Like, it gets to this point where it becomes access journalism. And so you can't really separate like the political sphere from the media sphere. It is all intertwined. And so if you're going to hold politicians accountable, then you also need to be holding the content creators that run cover for them accountable. You know, like they have some responsibility in that. They have some, and it's the same thing with on issues that they don't cover. I mean, if you want like the reason everybody wanted independent media was because we needed voices covering things that aren't being covered. And so if your favorite content creator strays from that, or isn't doing that job, or is continuing the same kind of mainstream narratives, you know, with just the occasional cuss word thrown in, and basically their entire show is like show a mainstream media clip and then commentate on, you know, whatever it was, and that's like their whole thing. You need to be holding them accountable. Like we can't afford for independent media just to become mainstream media light. Like, we have to push you know, independent media more, I think.
Yeah, 100%.